Again, welcome back, students, to this physics chapter, friction. And up till now, we have seen what is friction, why friction is caused, types of friction we have seen, or forms of friction we have seen. We have even seen advantages of friction. Now we are seeing disadvantages of friction, and we will see if it is disadvantages, how to reduce those disadvantages in a friction. So we have seen in the last video that friction is very necessary, though it is an evil, but it is necessary because our daily activities we cannot do without friction. Whenever an object is moving, whenever we are walking, sitting, doing, playing, we are kicking the ball, the friction is present, and friction is very necessary because some of the activities we cannot do without the friction. Now, what are the disadvantages of friction? Since friction is caused because of rubbing of surfaces, okay, there are irregularities between the surfaces. So there are two main disadvantages of the friction, okay. For example, when you take your hand and you rub it on it during the winter season, if you are feeling cold, what we do, we start rubbing our hand. What it makes the surface of our hands warm. That means when two objects are rubbing on each other, at that time heat is generated. So friction generates heat. So when friction is taking place, at that time it generates heat. If you are usually in the classes, many students do what they do, they are performing some activity, not activity, but they are playing with the scale. When they are taking the scale and they are hitting on the hard surface like rock or tiles, at that time sparks are generated, and if you touch the surface of the scale, you will see that it is hot. It is hot. When someone is cutting with the electric blade, if you are cutting iron things, at that time also friction is generated, it becomes hot, the blade also becomes hot, and the surface of the iron also becomes hot. Okay, let us read from the book. Although friction is necessary for many of our daily activities, it has disadvantages. Friction between two surfaces generates heat. So the first disadvantage is that friction generates heat. For example, when you rub your palms against each other, it generates some amount of heat due to friction between the palms. Have you seen metal being cut with a rotating blade? The friction between the blade and the metal generates enough heat to produce sparks. So this is the first disadvantage of the friction, that it generates heat. And when heat is generated, at that time there is some wear and tear of the parts. Or when the irregularities are rubbing against each other, at that time, what we can say, parts get the parts get worn out when the friction is generated. Why? Because the irregularities, they rub against each other, and due to which the parts get worn out. So the two main disadvantages of friction is that the friction generates heat and parts get worn out. For example, after 3, 4, 5 years, if you are using a two-wheeler, usually the rear tire, पिछला जो चक्का होता है, we have to change it. Why? Because the tread marks on it, they get worn out because due to the friction on the road and due to the friction between the road and the tires, and therefore we have to change our tires at regular intervals. Okay, let us read from the book. Due to friction, parts of machines get worn out and have to be replaced. So machine के जो parts होते हैं big industries में, some parts where continuously it is moving round and round and round, then continuously if there is friction between two parts, then those parts have to be replaced at regular intervals. Okay, friction between the road and the wheels of a moving vehicle can generate enough heat to damage the tires. That is why it is advisable to stop a car for a while after it has traveled a long distance. Means when you are traveling for a long distance using your four-wheeler or a two-wheeler, at that time the heat is generated between the friction of the road and the tire, which can damage the tire if it is continuously moving. So you take a stop, you wait for a while, let the temperature of the tire get to its original position, and then again you can start your journey. So these were the disadvantages of friction. So now we have seen the disadvantages of friction. Now if the friction is disadvantages, then it is necessary that we should reduce that disadvantage, or in other words, we should reduce the friction. So if you are going to reduce the friction, that means the disadvantage caused by the friction, that is generation of heat and wearing out of machine parts, or machine parts getting worn out, that can also be reduced. Okay, reducing friction, as we have already seen that rolling friction is less than the sliding friction. So we use this technique of rolling friction in the machine parts. If you see your bicycle, if you have taken your bicycle to the to mend it, उसको ठीक करने के लिए अगर आप bicycle लेके जाएंगे, तो you see that when a tire is taken out, or the pedals are there, or the handles are there, where there is moving parts are there, at that time you can see that in the tire there is a section like this called as ball bearings. ऐसे दो रिंग्स होते हैं, और इस रिंग्स के बीच में ऐसे छोटे छोटे गोल 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 बॉल बियरिंग्स होते हैं. Okay, so what is this? This is nothing but this is rolling friction. Okay, suppose you want to move a bigger box which is very heavier. At that time some pipes are placed in this box. ये बॉक्स के नीचे ऐसे पाइप्स प्लेस करते हैं. ओके, सो दैट रोलिंग फ्रिक्शन कैन टेक प्लेस. ओके, when so that the this block or this heavy box can easily roll over these pipes. Therefore this technique of rolling friction is one of the thing that you use to reduce the friction. And the second thing that you use, it is called as lubrication. Lubricating the surface. Again, take the example of your bicycle. During the rainy season, you see that the chain of your cycle and the parts, they rust is formed on the chain. At that time, the cycle guy, जिसके पास आप सुधारने के लिए जाते हो, he oils it. उसमें क्या डालता है वो? ऑयल डालता है या ऑयलिंग करके देता है. Oiling is nothing but it is lubrication. As soon as the oiling is done, because of oiling, the surfaces become smooth. The oil acts as a smoothness between the two surfaces. दो surfaces के बीच में oil smooth surface करके use होता है, and therefore our vehicle or our bicycle, it starts moving very freely. Even the doors and the latches, if they are not working, our locks are not working properly, we put oil in them. Putting oil or oiling the objects, it is called as lubricating the surfaces. Okay, let us read from the book. Reducing friction. Ball bearings are made of extremely hard material. So these ball bearings, they are made up of extremely hard materials, hard metal. They are fitted in the moving parts of all kinds of machine. They reduce friction and allow the part of the machine move smoothly and last longer. So due to this ball bearing, ऐसा नहीं है, it does not mean that it is not going to worn out. Yes, the parts are going to worn out, but 3 साल में 4 साल में जो मशीन खराब होने वाली है, it will take 5 to 6 years to now to replace the parts. So this is why rolling friction is used. Application of a grease to the ball bearings further reduces friction. Oiling or greasing. Again, grease is an lubricating lubricating material. So oils and greases are used on the ball bearings so that it further reduces the friction. The grease acts as a lubricant and fills in the irregularities, which reduces friction between the surface. So oils and grease, they fill in the irregularities between the two surfaces and reduces the friction. Sometimes an air cushion also helps to reduce friction, as in a hovercraft. Oil is also used to lubricate machines. So what happens? Air is also used. Have you seen a hovercraft? Hovercraft is like what we say, the military people use the hovercrafts very frequently. Usually, where there is a what we say, quicksand, muddy sand, दलदल जहाँ पे होती है वहाँ पे ये hovercraft use करते हैं. This is the muddy sand surface or this is the water surface full of mud and you cannot row your boat. हम इसके ऊपर बोट नहीं चला सकते हैं क्योंकि फ्रिक्शन होगा. So at that time a hovercraft is there. ये दोनों के बीच में एयर कुशन तैयार हो जाता है एंड देन इट मूव्स ऑन दैट एयर कुशन. इसके नीचे से हवा निकलती है, जो दो सरफेस के बीच में हवा रहती है और ये थोड़ा सा ऊपर चलता है. सो दिस इज हाउ द होवरक्राफ्ट्स आर यूज. यूजुअली मिलिट्री पीपल यूज और द प्लेसेस वेयर देयर इज क्विक सैंड और मडी सर्फेसेस जहाँ पे दलदल होती है वहाँ पे ये होवरक्राफ्ट यूज करते हैं. सो आइदर ऑयलिंग इज देयर, ग्रीसिंग इज देयर और एयर कुशनिंग इज देयर. एयर इज एयर cushioning. So in this way the friction can be reduced. While playing carom, talcum powder is sprinkled on the board. Now they have given here talcum powder, but while we play carom, at that time boric powder or a special powder of the carom is used. Why? Because of the powder, the friction between the striker and the surface of the carom reduces and the striker can move very easily. Can you tell why? This makes the surface smooth and reduces friction. Although we can reduce friction to a great extent, friction can never be totally eliminated. So, although using all these methods, using a boric powder on the carom, oiling, greasing, air cushioning in the hovercraft, at that time, or using all these methods, we can reduce the friction, but we cannot eliminate it. Eliminate it means we cannot make the friction zero. We cannot eliminate it. There will be always a friction. Let it be air, let it be two surfaces, or let it be a liquid. We are going to experience some or the other kind of friction. So this is all in your lesson. So this finishes your chapter friction. Thank you.